My palms felt slick against the controls, the tang of recycled oxygen thick in the close quarters of my Viper cockpit. I ran my tongue across teeth gone dry with anticipation, the whine of the hyperdrive winding down around me. Every damn second, and there'd been too many to count since we'd abandoned Earth, felt like it was taking an eternity. Sensors registering transit point arrival, Lieutenant, the chirpy AI voice of Ivan splintered the silence. His manufactured cheer always set my teeth on edge. All right, cut the hyperdrive. Prep the scope for low power scan. I replied, my voice a hoarse whisper. I dreamt of this day for years. Not the endless hours spent cooped up in this glorified tin can, but the chance to put a pirate ship between my crosshairs. The chance at some long overdue payback. Earth was gone, or something worse than that, a silent tomb cut adrift in the universe. All because some scavenger lord and his grubby crew decided they fancied a planet-sized trophy. We didn't have much left. A scattering of survivors across a patchwork fleet of military and civilian ships cobbled together. The odds were firmly against us, but we had something the pirates didn't, an ace up our sleeve so secret, so desperate that those back in Fleet Command had branded me and my squadron a glorified cleanup crew if things went sideways. Our official squadron name was the Voidhawks. The rest of the fleet called us the Lazarus Initiative. Scanning, a new voice interjected, this one human, contacts detected. 3 hostiles at bearing 120. Looks like Hammerhead-class corvettes. Nasty little buggers. Patch me through to command, I said, keeping my eyes glued to the scope readouts. Admiral Vasiliev needs to know we found ourselves a dance party. There was a long, crackling pause as Ivan found the signal amidst the electromagnetic churn of deep space. We were broadcasting on tight beam frequencies too focused for those pirate scum to pick up unless they were right on top of us. Even then, it looked like random noise to anyone who didn't have the encryption protocol. It was one hell of a gamble, but then again, our whole damn existence out here was a gamble. Lieutenant Jaeger, a familiar voice, rough and weathered, grated through the tiny speaker, report. Admiral, I straightened a fraction, doing my best to maintain a veneer of military discipline. Voidhawk Squadron has eyes on 3 hammerheads. We're ready to introduce them to the initiative. Another drawn-out pause. I could practically hear the old man's wheels turning as he considered his options. I knew what he was chewing over, the risk, the cost, the payoff. Very well, Lieutenant. God have mercy on us all. You have 60 minutes. Vasiliev out. The transmission cut off with a fizz of static. All right, the ball was officially in my court now. I took a deep, steadying breath, the scent of the air recycler doing little to calm my thundering pulse. No time for nerves. This was it, the moment I had been anticipating, planning, dreading, since we first launched the Lazarus Initiative. It was almost a relief. Waiting was always the worst part. Listen up, Voidhawks, I keyed the squadron comm, you know the drill. Harper, you've got point, get us into weapons range while they're disoriented. Sierra, stay low and cover Harper's 6. I'll bring up the rear and provide targeting data. Remember, these sons of B. Jaeger language, Ivan interjected with insufferable precision. I was starting to think that AI had been programmed with a nagging subroutine. I rolled my eyes and amended my statement. Remember, these scumbags got us into this mess, and it's damn well past time we returned the favor. This is more than a mission, Voidhawks. We're gonna show those pirates what happens when they mess with what's left of humanity. Let's go light 'em up. The comms crackled alive with a volley of affirmatives. My squadron, even with their motley assortment of call signs and personalities, were the best I could have asked for. Every one of them had survived the fall of Earth. Every one of them thirsted for a taste of righteous vengeance against the parasites gnawing at the edges of what little remained of our corner of the galaxy. We were less than a minute out from our target. I watched glowing dots blossom on the scope, transforming from vague blobs to detailed silhouettes. 3 hammerheads, blunt, angular brutes with enough firepower to vaporize an asteroid field. In the old days, my Viper wouldn't have stood a chance against even one of those behemoths. But those were the old days, and I had a shiny new toy itching for a test drive. Activating the initiative, I muttered, thumbing a sequence of commands on the control panel. Ivan chirped as a countdown began, a digitized funeral dirge that echoed the thumping of my own heart. The initiative, a cluster of classified modifications that turned my run-of-the-mill Viper into something out of a nightmare. The culmination of every wild idea Earth's best and brightest could cram into a fighter ship in a last-ditch effort to level the playing field. No fancy shield generators or long-range missiles, we were scrappers, the underdogs in the grand scheme of things. What we carried was far more dangerous, far more unpredictable. 30 seconds to activation, chirped Ivan with the same upbeat tone he might have used to announce dinner being ready. Harper, bless her trigger-happy soul, dove straight into the fray. Her fighter, a battered old gunship they called the Kraken, unleashed a volley of anti-hull rockets, drawing the hammerhead's attention like a swarm of particularly angry wasps. If there was one thing Harper loved more than taking down pirates, it was playing the bait. I got 'em all riled up, boss. She whooped into the comms, a feral grin etched into her voice. Let's have some fun with these clowns. Right on cue, Sierra swooped in on a converging trajectory, her sleek fighter leaving behind a faint vapor trail as she engaged her stealth suite. It wasn't perfect invisibility, but against a bunch of scavenging goons more used to targeting slow-moving freighters than nimble dogfighters, it would have to do. 15 seconds. Ivan announced merrily. Sweat trickled down my brow as I keyed up my weapons systems, the taste of metal sharp in my mouth. We had one shot at this. One. If we fumbled this chance, we weren't just dead, we would hand the enemy the very weapon they'd need to wipe out whatever was left of us. Talk about pressure. Initiative active, Lieutenant. Ivan reported, somehow managing to sound smug. I took a shaky breath, eyes locked on the nearest hammerhead, a scarred monstrosity that I imagined carried the blood of too many innocents. My fingers danced across the power management display, shunting energy from flight systems and into the experimental weapon nestled in my Viper's core. A low hum, a vibration building through the bones of the ship, told me it was spooling up, hungry. Harper. Sierra. Disengage. I barked into the comms, the urgency cutting through all other chatter. They obeyed with practiced efficiency, peeling back as I targeted the lead hammerhead. Its cannons were turning to track Harper, turrets spitting fiery streaks. Insignificant pinpricks against the Kraken's patchwork armor. My moment was here. This is for Earth, you bastards, I hissed, and squeezed the trigger. There was no sound, no blinding flash of energy, no satisfying explosion. 1 second, the hammerhead was a lumbering symbol of piracy, a testament to brutality. The next, it simply blinked out of existence. Vanished as if erased from the canvas of space, leaving nothing but a faint shimmer in its wake. What the hell? Sierra's voice was awestruck, the usual bravado melting into pure disbelief, mirroring the feeling churning in my own gut. My weapon pulsed, a tremor vibrating through my control stick. I stared at the scope, watching the panicked reactions of the remaining 2 hammerheads as they wildly scanned the space where their companion had been moments before. They noticed. Harper's voice, thick with nervous excitement, cut in. Repeat, it looks like they noticed. A ripple of cold ran down my spine. Damn it. They weren't supposed to see that so easily. The initiative wasn't a flashy weapon. It wasn't about loud displays of power, it was about precision, the scalpel to their blunt hammer. This was a complication, and not the sort easily solved with rockets and lasers. Sierra, status, I snapped, trying to wrestle back control of a situation spiraling towards chaos. Systems green. She began, but I barely registered the words. My eyes were glued to the tactical display as sensor readings danced across the screen. The 2 remaining hammerheads weren't firing wildly, instead, a pattern was emerging. They were taking up defensive formations, circling, mirroring each other's movements. It was a textbook reaction to an unknown threat, but it was the worst possible news for us. Voidhawks, fall back and regroup, I gritted out, the bitter taste of aborted victory clinging to my tongue. 1 quick kill against unprepared targets had been the best case scenario. 1 kill followed by confusion and disarray that we could exploit. Now, with their eyes open to the threat we posed, the element of surprise was gone. But Lieutenant, we've got 'em right where we want 'em, Harper protested, a whine of frustration creeping into her voice. Negative, Harper, I cut her off. They're adapting too quickly. We overplayed our hand. We need to re-strategize. Ivan, ever helpful, announced he was registering multiple hyperspace signatures converging on our position. It was the final nail in the coffin. The hammerheads had signaled for backup. They probably knew exactly what we'd done to their comrade, and within minutes we'd be facing a fleet-sized problem rather than a skirmish. Anger and disappointment surged, twisting my insides, but there was no room for emotions right now. This was about survival. Voidhawks, form on me. We're pulling back to Fleet Rendezvous. We'll live to fight another day. I banked my Viper, the empty space where the hammerhead had been mocking me as we retreated. We were outgunned, outmatched, and facing the very real prospect of the initiative's existence being broadcast to every pirate lord and cutthroat in the known galaxy. But as I burned back towards the flickering pinpricks of distant starships that represented safety, a sliver of something like hope cut through the gloom. The pirates, predictable, brutal, opportunistic, they had a weakness born of their own arrogance. They'd assumed that after our spectacular disappearing act, we'd hunker down, lick our wounds, go into hiding. They wouldn't expect us to strike back. They wouldn't expect the hunted to become the hunters. A flicker of a plan started to form in my mind, a desperate, reckless gamble fueled by a mix of fury and despair. The Lazarus Initiative was meant to be a final deterrent, a threat held in reserve. But if we were already marked for death, if the secret was already out, then maybe, just maybe, we could go from being the weapon they feared to the fire they couldn't contain. Admiral Vasiliev looked like he'd aged 20 years since our last transmission. That was understandable, it hadn't even been an hour, and I'd nearly blown our best-kept secret to every pirate scumbag in the sector. The bridge of his flagship was a study in controlled tension, flickering displays painting harsh shadows on tired faces. This was the heart of what little remained of humanity's fighting spirit, a handful of warships, carriers cobbled together from converted civilian liners, an assortment of repurposed mining rigs. Everything we had, pinned on a desperate gamble. Lieutenant, Vasiliev regarded me with a mix of resignation and something that might have been grudging respect. Explain. Now. I took a steadying breath, ignoring the knot in my stomach and the lingering phantom hum of the initiative still whispering in my bones. Admiral, they saw it. The hammerheads, they saw the effect. Worse, they signaled for backup before we could finish them off. A wave of murmurs swept through the bridge, a chorus of dismay and fear. Vasiliev steepled his fingers, his eyes never leaving mine. So, the initiative is compromised. It wasn't a question. Yes, sir, keeping my voice level was an effort. But, we might be able to turn this around. I think they'll assume we're on the run, that we'll lay low. And you propose we do the opposite? Vasiliev's bushy eyebrows arched in a skeptical curve. Exactly, sir. They have the numbers. We have the weapon they don't even begin to comprehend. I hammered home the point. This isn't about a battle anymore, it's about a campaign. Hit and run. Make them paranoid, force them to scatter their forces across the sector. Vasiliev drummed his fingers on the scarred metal of the command table, his gaze distant. We were on the edge of a knife here. Stay hidden, and the pirates might root out the existence of the initiative themselves, turning our weapon on us. Fight them head on, and we'd be wiped out before we could blink. The gamble I was proposing was more than risky, it was reckless, borderline insane. But the fire was kindled, and the fury of 1,000 lost worlds pulsed through my veins. They wanted to snuff out what remained of us? Fine, let them come. We'd make them choke on the ashes. Lieutenant Jaeger, Vasiliev sat up straighter, a sliver of the old fighting admiral showing through the fatigue. You have 30 minutes to convince me that your plan is more than a suicide run. The briefing was short and brutal. My Voidhawks, bless them, balked only slightly at the inherent insanity of the plan. Harper was practically vibrating with a mix of excitement and the kind of grim determination that spoke of far too many scars. Sierra voiced some concerns, but in the end, her trust in me was unwavering. Even Ivan fell begrudgingly silent as I laid out my proposal. It wasn't pretty, and it certainly wasn't safe. We would act as the bait, luring smaller pirate strike forces into ambushes, exploiting the initiative's terrifying potential. It was less about inflicting catastrophic losses on them, and more about sowing confusion, turning their strength against itself. Make them doubt every shadow, every flicker on a sensor screen. Make them see the ghost of vanished ships around every corner. The plan hinged on speed, precision, and the ability to evaporate into the vastness of space at a moment's notice. It meant pushing the initiative, and ourselves, to the absolute limit. If the weapon misfired, or our timing was even slightly off, we weren't facing defeat. We were facing oblivion. But, if it worked, if we could buy enough time. Voidhawks, I met the eyes of each member of my squadron, their faces taut with a mixture of fear and a hunger for the fight. We're not just out here for revenge. We're not just out here to make them pay. We're fighting for the chance to rebuild. To stop them from wiping out everything that's left of us. This is about more than ourselves. It's about hope. With those words hanging in the frigid silence of our cockpits, the Voidhawks and I, the Lazarus Initiative, relaunched into the void. We weren't soldiers anymore. We weren't pilots. We were ghosts, specters wielding a weapon ripped from a nightmare. And we would turn their greed against them, their hunger for dominance into their downfall. The calms crackled not with battle cries or boasts of victory, but with a tense, crackling silence. It was the silence of predators out on the hunt, every sense tuned to the void, every instinct waiting for the inevitable lunge of the prey. The first ambush site was a calculated choice, a nebula on the outskirts of a system known for its pirate scavenging operations. Nebulae were notoriously poor hunting grounds for warships, too much interference, too many blind spots. That would work in our favor. Sensors show a hammerhead class and 2 smaller escorts closing in. Sierra's voice was a bare whisper, tinged with a nervous tremor that we all shared. Classic pirate formation, boss. They think they've cornered an easy meal. A flash of morbid humor flickered in my mind. They weren't entirely wrong. We were bait, and their hunger would be their demise. Harper, take your position. Ivan, initiate ghost protocol, I murmured, my own hands tightening around the control yoke until my knuckles turned white. The space around our Vipers shimmered as the experimental cloaking suite engaged. It wasn't true invisibility, more like sensor obfuscation, enough to turn us into flickering distortions, to mask the telltale signatures of the initiative powering up. Ivan's voice cut in, counting down the seconds. The hammerhead swelled on the tactical display, a predatory metal shark prowling cautiously closer, flanked by 2 dart-like gunships. 30 seconds, Lieutenant. Ivan had developed a nasty habit of picking the absolute worst moments to find his sense of dramatic timing. Harper, bait them into the nebula. With pleasure, boss, Harper practically purred with ghoulish delight. She broke formation, her battered ship veering away on a course that would take her tantalizingly close to the hammerhead's flank. As expected, the lead pirate ship couldn't resist. It peeled off, its engines flaring, those smaller escorts sticking close like vicious little remoras. It would split their strength, perfect. Sierra, you're up, I murmured. Her sleek fighter shimmered into partial visibility long enough to be spotted, just a blip on the pirate's scopes, and then she was a ghost again, flitting towards the rear of the hammerhead convoy. They're taking the bait. Sierra's voice held a note of wonder, they're splitting up. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. So far, so good. The hammerhead, now isolated, lumbered deeper into the swirling gases of the nebula, the perfect trap for a disappearing act. 10 seconds, Ivan announced, almost gleeful. Targeting displays danced in front of me, the calculations dizzying in their precision. The initiative wasn't just a point-and-shoot weapon. It was about angles, split-second timing, taking into account relativistic distortions based on our speed, their speed, every variable that could go disastrously wrong. That's why I was the pilot. The initiative thrummed beneath my hands, hungry, ready to be unleashed. Sierra, take out those escorts, I barked into the comm. Classic dogfight, don't give them a chance to signal back to Mama. Copy that, she replied, a hint of steel returning to her tone. Distantly, I heard the chatter of weapons fire, that would be Sierra, dancing with the escorts. My focus narrowed. The hammerhead loomed ever closer in my sights. Every part of me was screaming to unleash the weapon, but patience was paramount. Just a few more seconds, a tighter angle, and it would be perfectly exposed. Now. I barked the command, triggering the initiative. Space seemed to fold over itself. There was no satisfying explosion, no blinding flash to signal its success. One moment the hammerhead was there, a jagged outline on a swirling canvas of nebula gas, and the next. It was gone, as if an unseen hand had simply wiped it away. Got 'em. Harper's whoop crackled through the comms, punctuated by the distant rumble of exploding escort ships. Sierra took 'em out clean, boss. For a moment, there was an almost surreal silence on the comms. We had pulled it off, a flawless execution of a plan that was barely a step above madness. And then, like a ripple spreading from a dropped stone, came the chilling echo of our victory. Pirate channels exploded in a frenzy of panicked transmissions, garbled shouts of fear and disbelief. The hunters had become the hunted. The Lazarus Initiative had claimed its first victims. And the galaxy would never be the same.